West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Doctors in white coats standing out in front of the Supreme Court at what looked like a fairly official press conference. It was held by a group that called themselves America's Frontline Doctors. But it pretty quickly became clear that this was not a really normal doctors' press conference. The group basically gathered there at the Supreme Court for some reason to assure Americans, to tell Americans that everything they'd heard about COVID was wrong, that COVID is actually no big deal, that you definitely don't need to stay socially distanced from anybody else. You certainly don't need to wear a mask because none of those things actually prevent you from getting COVID. And besides, even if you get COVID, it is no big deal, in part because there's already a cure for COVID. Now, because the America's Frontline Doctors thing happened during the Trump years, it didn't end up just being like a weird piece of marginalia on the edge of the news. That group ended up, I kid you not, getting praised by the President of the United States from the White House. The group got White House briefings. The group ended up becoming a celebrated cause in the conservative media. I mean, even as their bizarre claims about fake cures for COVID were being taken down by Facebook and other social media platforms, Fox News and the Trump White House was promoting them like they were actual experts. NBC News, Time Magazine, several other outlets later published reporting about how the America's Frontline Doctors fiasco morphed from that initial sort of launch into what appears to have been a very lucrative telemedicine scam in which they marketed and prescribed another fake COVID cure, the anti-parasite drug ivermectin, which is a drug that has real uses both in livestock and in humans. It treats your scabies, you guys, but it's an anti-parasitic drug. It doesn't treat COVID, not even a little bit. The public reporting around where the ivermectin craze on the right came from, up to and including people taking animal formulations of the drug and putting themselves in serious danger by doing so. The public reporting around the ivermectin craze shows this America's Frontline Doctors group appearing to take a hefty financial cut out of bogus telemedicine appointments that were used to prescribe people that bogus treatment. So much so that the House Coronavirus Task Force is now investigating their role in the whole ivermectin craze. We've reached out to America's Frontline Doctors today for comment on this. We haven't heard back from them. But let's say you're the governor of an American state. Let's say you're the leader, in fact, of one of the states with the highest body count already from COVID. And you've decided you need a new top health official for your state in the midst of the epidemic. Why you'd go to someone from America's Frontline Doctors? That group, really? But that is what Florida Governor Ron Desantis absolutely did.
I'm Dr. Joe Latipo. I'm a physician at UCLA, and I'm a clinical researcher also. And I'm speaking for myself and not on behalf of UCLA. So I want to say that, so I'm thinking of the people who are behind the screens that are watching what you guys are broadcasting.
That's a doctor named Joseph Ladapo, as he said. To the extent that he rose to prominence, Dr. Ladapo rose to prominence with lots of appearances in conservative media, lots of op-eds he published on conservative op-ed pages, including ones where he argued that COVID really isn't so bad. You shouldn't, for example, wear a mask to try to avoid getting it. Quote, wearing a mask has little or no effect on respiratory virus transmission, he says. Now that he's Surgeon General of the state of Florida, he does press conferences with Governor DeSantis where he warns ominously about how unsafe the vaccines are because strangers around the country have told him so.
The reality of how safe these vaccines are is absolutely not public. It's not public because when people, and I know this for a fact because patients of mine, colleagues of mine, strangers around the country who've contacted me about their experiences, and just, healthy people who've had adverse reactions after the vaccines. There's been a concerted effort to prevent these types of stories, these experiences, from receiving the attention that they obviously should receive.
Yeah, we definitely haven't had any attention in this country to anybody having an adverse event from a vaccine. Definitely that hasn't been covered. But strangers around the country have told him that's the truth. So he's speaking as Surgeon General of the state of Florida. In that role, he has repeatedly said that not only are the vaccines not effective, they're unsafe, they don't really work, they could hurt you. Again, Surgeon General of the state of Florida, handpicked for the job by Governor Ron DeSantis. Just within the past couple of weeks, the Surgeon General received a great deal of press coverage for his refusal to wear a mask while meeting with a Florida state senator, one who had just been diagnosed with cancer. He would not wear a mask in her office, even when she asked him to and told him she had serious medical issues. He later said that he doesn't find wearing a mask to be productive when talking to people. So there, that's enough for him. Whatever, you and your cancer. One of the things that is most interesting about all of this is that Dr. Ladapo rose to this level of prominence in part, not only because he's well-spoken and he's willing to put himself out there in conservative op-ed pages and stuff, but he did take that sort of America's frontline doctor thing and put that right at the forefront in terms of his credibility. He has staked his credibility specifically on COVID, on his assertions that he is in fact a frontline doctor who has spent all of this time treating COVID patients as a physician. Well, we have new reporting tonight that calls that into question. Dr. Ladapo, the Surgeon General of Florida, appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis, he has made numerous assertions that he has personally treated COVID patients. In March 2020, he wrote an op-ed in USA Today in which he said that he had, quote, spent the past week taking care of patients with COVID-19 at UCLA's flagship hospital. For weeks now, we've been trying to contact UCLA to ask them about Dr. Ladapo's assertions that he treated COVID patients there early in the pandemic. UCLA declined to answer our questions, not just once or twice, but many times. They really shut us down and limited themselves to only saying that Dr. Ladapo worked for them during the pandemic. But when we realized that talking to UCLA was going to be a dead end, we decided that we would try a different approach, and we would instead approach some employees at UCLA. And after weeks of calls and emails, we were able to talk to multiple people who worked at UCLA's hospital at the same time as Dr. Ladapo. We're not naming them because they are not authorized to speak on the record. We did, however, confirm their credentials independently. And 4 of these sources tell us that before that press conference he took part in on the steps of the Supreme Court in July 2020, in which he billed himself as one of America's frontline doctors, 4 sources who worked alongside him at UCLA tell us that they do not believe Dr. Ladapo had actually treated COVID patients at all at UCLA when he stood up there and called himself a frontline doctor. They also say that his numerous op-eds greatly mischaracterized the type of work that he was doing during the pandemic. For example, in March 2020, he wrote an op-ed piece for USA Today in which he said he had, quote, spent the past week taking care of patients with COVID-19 at UCLA's flagship hospital. The following month, April 2020, he wrote an almost identical piece for the Wall Street Journal, where he also talked about his experience caring for patients with suspected or diagnosed COVID infections at UCLA. Although Dr. Lapido says that he spent time caring for COVID patients, one of our sources, who was part of the UCLA COVID-19 task force, tells us this, quote, I was part of the team that was taking care of COVID-19 patients in the beginning of the pandemic, and Dr. Latipo was not part of that team. There were two separate groups, general medicine and ICU, plus a volunteer program to take care of COVID-19 patients. Dr. Latipo was not part of either. It was a small group of people, a task force. Everyone knew everyone. Quote, he wasn't there. In addition to that statement, we have obtained scheduling documents from the time that Dr. Latipo was working at UCLA. They show the schedules for dozens of doctors who are also working in the internal medicine unit alongside Dr. Latipo. These documents span a period from June 2019 to September 2021, and we have reviewed these documents in detail. While these documents show that numerous doctors at that hospital were assigned to work in the COVID unit, work specifically with COVID patients, at no point was Dr. Latipo scheduled to treat COVID patients during that time period that we were able to review. We should note specifically that he was not listed as working in a COVID unit in March 2020 when he wrote in USA Today that he had, quote, spent the past week taking care of patients with COVID at UCLA's flagship hospital. In addition to those scheduling documents, our sources say the press conference Dr. Latipo took part in July 2020 also ignited conversations inside UCLA about his work and how his actions were affecting the reputation of the university and its hospital. One source at UCLA calling Dr. Latipo's opinion pieces a, quote, source of embarrassment. One of the sources told us, quote, in academic medicine, we're tasked with putting opinions out there that are fully sustained. His opinion was not. Another source added, quote, a lot of people here at UCLA are glad he is gone because we were embarrassed by his opinions and behavior. At the same time, we don't wish this on the people of Florida. They don't deserve to have someone like him making their health decisions. Despite what they describe as the shock and the feeling of embarrassment, what bothered these hospital employees the most, what they told us bothered them the most, is how the people who hired Dr. Latipo in Florida have cited Dr. Latipo's work at UCLA as a source of pride and as a source of bragging rights. I mean, you hear the name, the reference UCLA related to Dr. Latipo everywhere, at press conferences and newspaper articles. You see it at the top of his resume, UCLA, UCLA, UCLA. But the sources from UCLA that spoke to us said that it is unacceptable, given that Dr. Latipo clearly does not agree with UCLA's standards of care for treating COVID-19 patients. And for handling COVID-19 generally. He has refused to wear masks indoors. He has cast doubts on vaccines. He even participated in that crazy July 2020 event promoting hydroxychloroquine as a fake cure and calling himself a frontline doctor. One source telling us, quote, what hurts me the most is that those in Florida that hired him cite his work at UCLA as a point of admiration. But he is everything this hospital and this institution is not.
It is Tuesday, the 9th of November of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. Yes, it does. Always has. Always will. Oh, fair warning. There is roasted corn in the chowders here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Okay? We add a certain, smoky sweetness, shall we say. Okay, how are ya? Looks like Paul Gosar is off his rocker. Now, I know a lot of people think that it's wrong to, lump all crazy people into, a personage of an individual like Paul Gosar. But Paul Gosar is one crazy-ass individual, okay? I'm not condemning all crazy asses as being like Paul Gosar, but he's a crazy ass. All right, not all crazy asses are Paul Gosar, but Paul Gosar is a crazy ass. I am not kidding when I say that they should be dragging him out in a straitjacket. Well, okay, roll him out on a gurney. You don't need to drag him, though I would like to see him dragged. And then they can expel him later. A lot of people say expel him, then drag him out. It doesn't matter to me, one or the other. But get him in the straitjacket and get him out of there. Because he's certainly a danger, not only to himself, but others around him. Jeez. On a more, his own family can't stand him, so I suppose we're not supposed to cut him any slack. But I will say that the obvious tics and the little spasms that he does, it's usually indicative of somebody who's got a little neurological issues there going on. Just saying. And not in a good way. Okay, so the GOP will do nothing about it. Of course, they want to, hang Mike Pence, impeach Joe Biden, and install JFK Jr. as the titular head of, the universe? Because I don't know how JFK Jr., John, is going to be able to, make the important decisions like filling the potholes, fixing the bridges. It occurred to me that one of the big reasons why the GOP is calling infrastructure socialist, well, they did the same thing, not the GOP, but the same mindset that animates the GOP this day. They accused Eisenhower of being a commie. Yeah, interstate highway. Oh my God, it's commie. Now look where we are. Imagine that, trying to get across the United States of America, and there was like trails that you had to navigate to get to another main road that was also a dirt road. It was nice to get an interstate highway. People liked it. So did truckers. And the people that relied on the truckers. See how that worked? Socialism, no wonder. So it occurred to me that the reason that the infrastructure bill is opposed by every single GOP member is because, well, the obvious one, you can't give Joe Biden a win or acknowledge it, because then that would add legitimacy to his administration. Democratic administrations by default are illegitimate. So they have no intention of censuring Paul Gosar, holding him to account, because he's a foot soldier in their cause. He's a shock troop. Oh, he made a little joke about off an AOC. Oh, it was just a joke. Yes, only a joke when you get caught. Okay. And I would probably demand, if I was within the purview of a Paul Gosar as far as, a workplace, I would demand that the staffer or staffers who came up with that meme get fired too, and never allowed to work on Capitol Hill ever again. And it might follow them around to where they might not even get a 7-Eleven job. Can you pass a background check? I don't know. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. We can't trust you with our merchandise. Okay. On the other hand, I suppose if you cut off legitimate sources of income, then they're going to fall back into their old evil and corrupt ways. But I don't know. Marginalize them. We can put them in a gated community with sentries. That's what I would like to see. Of course, it could be a big turnaround because if you read the Claremont Institute's feverish, I don't know, what is that? Eliminationist porn? They get a bunch of military people and cops, sheriffs, and oh my God! And they get together and they talk about the supposed destruction of society around them because they didn't get their way. And apparently all the leftists in America, which is all of America, is going to rise up and hit the streets. And how are they going to be able to survive when there's this chaos of riots and mob control and all these dirty leftists out there, blowing up bombs? What are they going to do? Where are they going to put the Humvees? The armored Humvees? Oh, my God. And then you look at these guys that, by and large, that are writing for the Claremont and part of the Claremont Institute. They're sort of like Eastman. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't consider them and Josh Hawley to be the pinnacle of masculinity and manliness and with America in mind. I just don't. It's sort of like when Hitler talked about the master race, and then you looked at the guy. And God, you looked at Himmler. What about Himmler? Jeez. Give me an effing break. They look at themselves in the mirror and they see, I don't know, Drago. I think they do. Yeah. I am going to hit you. And they tried. Well, I think that we're in dire straits, of course, because have we allowed this to happen? Is it really true that we allowed it? Because the moneyed forces, what FDR called the organized mob, that's what he's talking about. When we talk about mob rule, we're not talking about the people. Really, what mob rule was the organized collection, I think that's redundant, of business interests and criminal enterprise. I'm going to get what I want, and I'm going to get it by any means necessary. Rules, that's for little people. That's for squares. Citizens, I think that's what they were called in Goodfellas. All of us were just citizens, following the rules, no excitement. Well, you know what? We have plenty of excitement, except we can find excitement in the beauty of the day because it's lucky. We are lucky to be existing. We are damn lucky. When you think of the chaos of the universe, the cosmos, man, that doesn't seem like a very nurturing environment as we know it. So we're lucky. We are damn lucky. And that is damn exciting. I got to tell you, I'm sorry for those good fella types that have to, find their excitement in causing mayhem and other people to suffer death and misfortune, or misfortune and death. Take your pick. I don't like mob rule. I don't like Vladimir Putin because he's a mobster. I don't like Deripaska because he's a mobster. And I don't like Mitch McConnell because he's one of those good old boys. But he's a mobster. I don't like it. I suppose I could tick off some that are on our side too. But right now, I don't think Jimmy Hoffa counts. What are we going to do about it? Well, I guess we can still go and vote. Speaking of voting, I still can't get over that Raffensperger going after Stacey Abrams as being, equal to Donald Trump in causing uncertainty about our elections. Give me a break. I will say that I learned at a very young age, when I began taking, politics seriously and working on campaigns and volunteering and whatnot, is that you don't want to get into this tinfoil hat attitude about our elections being manipulated by dark forces, because what that does, and I was told at a young age, what that does is that it causes uncertainty, and you want people to vote. No, you don't want people to not vote. And Paul Weyrich, of course, we know Paul Weyrich, the guy that said, I don't want everybody to vote. We only win elections when people don't vote. Right there. That's supposed to be the morality of America? They wrap themselves in the flag with that attitude? My God. Okay. Well, I don't like it. And it's not anything about what America is supposed to be about. I don't care right now to argue about the virtues of our founders because, some of them were slave owners. Lots were not. And the personages that we look upon as being the pinnacle of government and America at the time were only, and I got to tell you, in some ways, figureheads in themselves. Because there was a lot more abolitionists than there were slave believers. But you know who had the guns? That's why we tried to put a stop on everybody being able to have guns, so that you wouldn't have the citizenry demanding that they get their way, even if it's immoral. Paul Weyrich wanted to keep people from voting. If you have to do that, then you are anti-American. You do not believe in democracy. You do not believe in representative democracy. That's autocracy. That's not American. I'm sorry. Yeah, we can argue that that's what America is. That's probably where it was going to become because, even though they were enlightened, they didn't figure it all out. That's why it's an evolving document, not one set in stone. And we can only go by the original meaning of the people from then. Well, if we did go by the original meaning of the people then, there were a lot more abolitionists than there were slavers. So here we are. We let them, after the Civil War, we let them have military bases named after their treasonous generals. Because they fought the good fight. We were just having a disagreement. Yeah, we were having a disagreement about people using humans as chattel. And laughing about it. And that's the only way they could keep their economic engine engineering. What? Well, people do lunch now. We can do machining. It's enough to confound somebody who's been through it all before. As we all have, haven't we? Hey, why don't we break into this, whatever sort of rant it was today and get into the curated part of the show, which we have curated for you, because that's what we do here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, yeah, at the top, that was Rachel breaking down this handpicked, Ron Desantis' handpicked Florida Surgeon General. Anti-mask, anti-vax Florida Surgeon General. And everybody that he worked with at UCLA said, that guy wasn't part of the team. And we're not meaning hyperbole. I mean, there was only a dozen of us? He was never there. A dozen of us over 3 shifts. Think of that. That's the team. And this guy says he's a frontline worker. Well, I would surmise that if you called yourself a frontline worker like this Florida Surgeon General has, you have stolen valor. And there should be some sort of repercussion for that. Should be. On the rest of the menu, in a new legal filing, the Biden administration warned that the recent court order blocking its vaccine mandate will cost hundreds and hundreds of lives daily. With the passage of the infrastructure bill, the notoriously congested Brent Spence Bridge that sits in Mitch McConnell's backyard will finally get a long overdue overhaul. and two dissident Portland, Oregon academics are joining Bari Weiss in forming a sham university in Texas. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where two coalition parties have signed a power-sharing deal to form a new Czech government. And Mexican authorities have detained a man implicated in the Pegasus spy plot against journalists and human rights activists. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link, across the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And please, yes, we need money to pay our bills. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, send those funds to us once a month. We are able to put those dollars in a kitty and stretch them beyond compare, even on the quantum level, because we leave no strange quark unstretched. And then we are able to pay our bills, fly under the radar, continue this resistance against the Nazi takeover of the United States of America, and thereby fulfill our civic duties as envisioned and actually demanded, actually as the founders originally intended, oh so many years ago. Many years. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so on Twitter at Netroots Radio. It's at Netroots Radio, so go there. Tom takes care of that. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, in fact, I suggest you do, because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. Get those show notes and links linked up on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and other social media platforms too. So the show notes and links are obviously very important, because that's where the real reportage is. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, wherever podcasts can be found. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Tom Halls of Reuters. The Biden administration told a court yesterday, Monday, it has clear authority to impose a COVID-19 vaccine rule on employers with at least 100 staff, and that a court's order on Saturday blocking the rule could cost dozens or even hundreds of lives daily. People are increasingly returning to work, and they risk accelerating the spread of COVID-19 without the rule, said the filing in the U.S. Fifth Circuit by government lawyers. With the reopening of workplaces and the emergence of the highly transmissible Delta variant, the threat to workers is ongoing and overwhelming, said the filing. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration last week announced the rule, which also provides for a testing and masking alternative to vaccination and a January 4th deadline. The agency said it was necessary to prevent 250,000 hospitalizations. Put another way, that's 250,000. Republican governors, trade groups, private employers, and religious organizations, I guess they're all on the side of the virus. Makes you wonder, huh? Sued in various federal courts of appeal, arguing the administration overstepped its authority. Please. On Saturday, the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans suspended the rule, citing grave statutory and constitutional issues. The Fifth Circuit. kind of conservative, as you might suspect. The government filing was in response to a request by the plaintiffs for an injunction permanently blocking the rule. The government lawyers said that request was premature. The government lawyers noted that various cases that have been filed must be consolidated in one venue, and it remains unclear which court will hear the cases. And a White House press secretary on Monday yesterday urged employers to push ahead with vaccinations despite the legal challenges. Amir Madhani and Bruce Schreiner of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. President Joe Biden yesterday, Monday, launched his sales pitch for his recently passed $1 trillion infrastructure bill, predicting that a notoriously congested bridge that sits in Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell's backyard will finally get a long overdue overhaul. Biden said in an interview with WKRC-TV that he expected the Brent Spence Bridge, which carries traffic over the Ohio River and connects Cincinnati with northern Kentucky, would get funding in the bill that the House passed last week, and he is expected to soon sign into law. You all are going to get in the state of Kentucky well over $10 billion, Biden said in the interview. And you know what? It's all legal money, too, not that Russian mob money that Deripaska pumped into it. That mostly went into Mitch McConnell's pockets, conveniently. Biden continued about the bridge, the Brent Spence Bridge. It is listed as one of the most notorious bridges in the country, and so my guess is that that's going to be the choice that your governors are going to make and want to get done, and we can get it done now. The president spotlighted a proposed project in 2 states that he lost in the 2020 election to begin what is expected to be an extended administration-wide effort to tell the country about what the infrastructure bill could mean for Americans. Biden and cabinet members are expected to step up media appearances and visits around the country in the coming weeks to highlight what's in the legislation. Well, that only works if the media will, put them on. They're going to have to put on some Republicans instead to criticize about how socialist the infrastructure bill is. The White House says Biden will visit Baltimore tomorrow, Wednesday, to underscore how the bill will help Americans by upgrading ports and strengthening supply chains. The busy Brent Spence Bridge has long been a bane of motorists in both states. The Federal Highway Administration declared the bridge functionally obsolete in the 1990s because its narrow lanes carried more cars than it was designed for. Biden has previously pointed to the bridge project as a sort of much-needed infrastructure work that would finally get done if Congress passed the legislation. In a July CNN town hall in Cincinnati, he made passing reference to the dangerously outdated Brent Spence, vowing his administration would fix that damn bridge of yours if his legislation passed. In Kentucky, McConnell said Monday he was delighted to see the infrastructure bill on its way to Biden's desk, heaping praise on the bipartisan package he supported, even as he derided the president's broader $1.75 trillion social services and climate effort still making its way through Congress. Nigel Jacques of the Willamette Week brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A group of academics, intellectuals, and entrepreneurs unhappy with the political climate on the nation's college and university campuses is forming its own university in Austin, Texas. Two of the academics may be familiar to Portland. Peter Boghossian, a former Portland State University assistant professor of philosophy who resigned in September after years of decrying what he saw as the university's social justice factory, and Heather Heying, an evolutionary biologist and former tenured professor at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, who, along with her husband and colleague Brett Weinstein, has made news with her skepticism about the COVID-19 vaccines. Oh, wow, I guess they found themselves in the right place. Boghossian, a philosopher professor, played an outsized role in PSU campus politics. He co-authored a notorious 2018 hoax satirizing the language of gender studies by observing canine sex in Portland dog parks, and shepherded a free thinker society that was physically confronted by leftists in a preview of clashes that would eventually paralyze the city. Both he and Heying, while at Evergreen, attracted the ire of peers and students for rejecting progressive beliefs around race, religion, and gender until finding an audience on the political right, which is a nice way to say that they found the Nazis and the Nazis found them. Heying is listed as a member of the university's 31-member board of advisors, and Boghossian is listed as one of the 3 founding faculty fellows. The University of Austin, they're known as you attacks. You attacks me, we attacks you. Fight, fight, fight. Boy, they should hire me to do their fight songs and get their cheer squad together. The University of Austin, according to its founders, will be a nonprofit classroom-based institution that will begin offering graduate courses next year and undergraduate courses in 2024. That's also a nice way of saying they will not be accredited to do so. The startup is aiming for a specific niche. Academics and students who feel shut out of what they believe is an exclusively left-wing atmosphere on most university and college campuses. Every Nazi thinks there's a left-wing conspiracy in the world. Well, you know what? You're so far to the right, everything looks left to you. Many universities no longer have an incentive to create an environment where intellectual dissent is protected and fashionable opinions are scrutinized, writes the university's founding president, Pano Canelos, the former president of St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland. At our most prestigious schools, the primary incentive is to function as finishing school for the national and global elite. Amidst the brick and ivy, these students entertain ever more inaccessible theories while often just blocks away their neighbors, figuring out how to scratch out a living. Guy's a snake. The university will not accept public money, but says it has raised enough seed money to get started and is in the process of raising $250 million. Why Austin? If it's good enough for Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, the university's fact says, it's good enough for us. Well, it's still not good enough for the rest of America. You're a sham university. In fact, it looks like a pyramid scheme of Trump University, and we know where that went. And where are we going? Right to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. Those at increased risk for flu complications include children under the age of 5 and adults 65 and older, people with chronic health problems such as heart disease, asthma, and diabetes, and pregnant women. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
At least since the invention of the wheel, people have fixed, tinkered with, and improved every device they've possessed. It's been a human right. But after several thousand years, suddenly legal clauses are being tucked in purchase agreements saying that today's owners of products must not even peek, much less poke inside, the inner workings of our devices. Makers of anything with a computer chip in it, everything from your car to your toothbrush, have been especially vehement about this, rewriting human nature by outlawing our right to repair. Yes, they assert, you own the thing, but we own the intangible ideas that make it work. So if the product malfunctions, you must return it to us and pay us a premium to repair it. Plus, they prattle, you could hurt yourself trying to do it yourself, so trust us. Bovine excrement, barks Steve Wozniak. Companies inhibit your rights so they can have power, control over everything. Is he some consumer radical? No, Wozniak is the co-founder of Apple, the multi-billion-dollar global Goliath that is the world's biggest producer of consumer electronics. He's appalled that Apple has now become a fierce opponent of self-repair. He says we wouldn't have had an Apple except that early innovators like him grew up in a very open technology world. From the start, he points out, openness helps spread innovation and consumer demand. So, why stop the self-repair community, he asks? 2 big reasons. Besides letting corporations lock in monopoly profits from the repair industry, it also dissuades customers from bothering with repairs. Just throw the thing away and buy a new one. This is Jim Hightower saying, if you wonder where such massive, deadly levels of pollution by lead, mercury, plastic, etc. come from, look to the gross throwaway ethic of big tech profiteers like Apple. Howdy-ho, folks. Thanks for tuning in and sharing my weekly commentaries. Also, please join me for a live web show I host every other Tuesday, the Hightower Lowdown Happy Hour at the Chat and Chew Cafe. You can join the action live online as I chat with grassroots leaders and progressive sparklies from around the country. Go to hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew to find out about upcoming guests and watch past episodes. That's hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1952. That was the day that the labor movement lost Philip Murray. Philip was born in Scotland in 1886 to an Irish Catholic family. His father was a coal miner and a union leader. Philip followed his father into the mines at just the age of 10 years old. The father and son made the trip to the Pennsylvania coal fields together when Philip was just 16. They saved enough money and then sent for the rest of their family. One day, Philip got into an altercation with one of his bosses. Not only was he fired, his entire family was kicked out of their company home. From that point on, Philip was dedicated to the union cause as the only hope for working people. He quickly rose through the ranks of the United Mine Workers, becoming vice president by the time he was 33. He worked closely with United Mine Workers President John L. Lewis. During the 1930s, there became a nationwide drive to organize industrial workers. Philip was appointed to lead the Steelworkers Organizing Committee, a key sector for the industrial effort. The Steelworker Campaign met with historic success. They reached a collective bargaining agreement with U.S. Steel, the giant of the industry. Philip went on to become the first president of the United Steelworkers of America, as well as president of the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Under his leadership, industrial labor became a powerful force. But that force was checked by the passage of the Anti-Union Taft-Hartley Act in 1947. The anti-communist hysteria of the Red Scare also took its toll on the CIO, forcing Philip to expel some of the most radical unions from the organization. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Our temperature is expected to be about the same as yesterday, which was around 51-52. A few showers this morning with mostly cloudy conditions during the afternoon. Had about, over 3/4 of an inch of rain overnight. And about a 30% chance of rain throughout the day with mostly cloudy skies tonight with lows in the low 40s, winds light and variable. And then tomorrow we're expecting a high of around 51 again, when will be cloudy with showers and should bring with it, just a little bit, something less than a 1/4 inch, and the winds will be light and variable. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have been updated from the weekend, and the totals have increased. We now stand at 238,089 confirmed cases, and our deceased have increased by 3 and now stand at 333. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.95 inches. Visibility is at 5 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Unfortunately, it looks like the weather underground site is not loading completely, and we will have to abbreviate our weather forecast for the world and just keep it local. So we apologize. We'll make sure that we have it available for tomorrow. And that is weather from around the world, such as it is, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Associated Press staff bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Czech Republic gained a new government yesterday, Monday, after two-party coalitions that garnered a sizable chunk of votes in the country's parliamentary election last month signed a power-sharing deal. A three-party liberal-conservative coalition dubbed Together, composed of the Civic Democratic Party, Christian Democrats, and the TOP09 party, led the election with a 27.8% share of the vote. Together teamed up with a center-left liberal coalition made up of the Pirate Party and STAN, a group of mayors, which came in third place with 15.5% of the votes. The new partnership will hold a 108-seat majority in the 200-seat lower house of Parliament, relegating outgoing populist Prime Minister Andrej Babis and his centrist ANYO, or Yes movement, to the opposition. Babis narrowly lost the election with 27.1%. Monday's signing takes the populist billionaire a step closer to the end of his reign in power. President Milo Zeman has indicated that he was willing to swear in Fiala as prime minister, but it wasn't immediately clear when that would happen. And Fiala is the coalition's candidate for prime minister. The five parties are closer to the EU than Eurosceptic Babis. The new parliament also convened for the first time to elect a new speaker and other parliamentary officials. Among the government's immediate tasks are a new surge of coronavirus infections and high inflation driven up by soaring energy prices.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous staff at Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A Mexican man was arrested on allegations of cyber spying on a journalist using Pegasus, a global spy tool that has been used to hack smartphones, according to the Attorney General yesterday, Monday. The suspect was detained last week in the central city of Querétaro and is being held in Mexico City, the prosecutor's office said in a statement, which would not identify the targeted journalist. The previous administration of Enrique Peña Nieto faced accusations of wiretapping human rights activists, opposition officials, and journalists using Pegasus software developed by Israeli company NSO Group. Peña denied the accusations and said he would instruct a team to investigate the case. According to recent local media reports, at least 50 people from the close circle of current President Obrador, who assumed power in 2018, have also been potential surveillance targets, including his wife, children, and brothers. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.